All right, Jon Machota, theathletic.com, Cowboys 2-1, Carolina. Matt Rule, former Baylor head coach, comes to town after they won in Houston. Now they come back to Arlington, and Jon joins us, Sikkim 365 Radio. Jon, what is this rash of forcing, creating turnovers? This is like against the Dallas religion of the Cowboys for 20 years.
It really has. I've heard from other reporters that other teams do this from time to time. I have not seen it. So this is such a new thing to me that I'm just constantly like, all right, well, we'll see if this happens again next week. And then it happened again next. And then you're like, all right, well, let me wait until see if it happens again the week after that. And it has. And for me, it just keeps going back to the, Dan Quinn has to get a lot of credit for it, for the system he's put in. And then obviously, the players that he has added that have been able to make these plays, because I can tell you that for all the better part of the last decade, it wasn't like the Cowboys weren't trying to get takeaways in practice. It wasn't like they weren't working on it, but the style of defense they play now is just one that they're willing to take a little bit more risks. And that means they'll give up some bigger plays, but you're just kind of like, especially when you see some of these plays Trayvon Diggs is making, you're just like, okay, even if he gives up a big play here or there, let him keep doing what he's doing, because that's the type of stuff that you can get the ball back to the offense. The offense is clearly the strength of this team. That's what you want. And I'm cautious to say I think that it can continue, but just because of this better part of the last decade, you almost think like, all right, well, they're due to have a game where they don't get any. But so far, especially as long as Trayvon Diggs is healthy, I think you can kind of count on them doing this.
Jon, just for people, this might be a little too inside baseball, but there are times over the last decade where I've been sitting in the press box looking at Twitter, the Cowboys get an interception, and all of us tweet the same thing. Like, oh, my God, that was an actual interception. It happens at least once a year where everyone's like, oh, my gosh, it's been 8 weeks since we've seen one of those.
It really, and hey, that's part of the reason why is because that's just the way the defense was coached for, that most of the last decade. It was to keep things in front of you. You don't give up the big plays, and basically what you do is you make opposing offenses have to go 15, 20 plays down the field, long drives. Can this offense sustain it? And most offenses can't. And so the problem is, though, is that when you play that type of defense and you're not taking the ball away against the elite of the elite quarterbacks, and those are the ones that you're going to most likely be facing in January, they'll sit there and they'll be able to put together 20-play drives. So that's part of the reason why I think that you saw this change into what they've gone to. And clearly this is something that Dan Quinn wants to do, and it makes sense. And it's worked out well for him. And it makes you wonder, well, man, what could it be like when all the defensive, like the piece that are missing with Keanu O'Neal and with guys like, DeMarcus Lawrence, when they get back, what could this level get to? So it's pretty exciting times if you're a Cowboys fan watching this defense.
Jon, what was maybe the most surprising, if there was any surprises, and just how well they handled the Eagles? I mean, there was no doubt who the better team was by the end of that game.
There really wasn't. And I mean, I look at that Eagles squad, and it doesn't look like they belong in the same field. But at the same time, if you put Dak Prescott on that team and put Jalen Hurts on the Cowboys, I think it probably would be a different story. I mean, the key in not just between the Eagles and Cowboys, but the entire division, is that the Cowboys have an elite quarterback playing at a high level right now. Now, they obviously has a lot of other pieces around him. He has an offensive play caller that is doing an outstanding job, and obviously their defense has played a lot better, so that's factored in too. But, yeah, when you watch that game, none of it really felt like, oh, this is just kind of a fluke. Everything just is going the Cowboys' way. Next time they play the Eagles, it's not going to be like this. And I'm just kind of like, no, the next time they play the Eagles, it could be even worse.
Yeah.
Unless they improve at the quarterback position. And right now, if you're a Cowboys fan, you look across that division and you see, okay, our team has Dak Prescott, and you look at the other teams and you're like, they have Tyler Heineke and Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones. You have to feel pretty good about where you are in the division, because frankly, what we're looking at right now is the NFC East is what the NFC East was last year. This is what the Cowboys look like when they're healthy, well, relatively healthy at least, and you have your franchise quarterback.
All right, so Micah Parsons, he won the game basically against the Chargers because he forced that crazy sack or in the grass, which I didn't think was a good call, but it kept them from possibly having better field position, or like inside the 10. But now they're putting him at defensive end. He's creating havoc. He's an incredible player. So what happens when they get people back? Because isn't that one of the most important things that defense can ever do is put pressure on a quarterback?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. And then if you were kind of yeah, the only other thing would be to have, that elite shutdown corner. So basically the Rams are the blueprint for it. If you can have a pressure player like Aaron Donald on the front, and then you have a guy like Jalen Ramsey on the back, I mean, that's where you spend your money, no question about it, in today's NFL on defense. And so while I agree with that, if they are healthy and they have DeMarcus Lawrence back and they have Randy Gregory, I just think that he can make such a big impact on this team doing both. And that's, playing as a linebacker on first and second down, and then lining up on the outside, letting them go downhill on third down. And I think that's ultimately what you're going to see when Lawrence gets back. Dan Quinn doesn't want to show his cards right now, and he shouldn't. Heck, Michael was asked today about that, and he was like, "Well, I'm not going to even say, we don't want I want to keep the Panthers on edge." I think it's a pretty good possibility he's going to be playing edge again for this game. But when Lawrence gets back, that's when it'll be interesting to see what Dan Quinn does. But it is one of the key pieces on this defense is not only how good Micah Parsons has been, but it's the uncertainty that teams have in their game planning of where is this guy going to be. And really, off these last 2 weeks, not only was he their edge rusher and was he effective, but it was Dan Quinn moved him around to whatever was going to be the best matchup. Oh, Chargers, your starting right tackle isn't playing? We're going to put Mike over there. Oh, Eagles, your starting left tackle isn't playing? We're going to put Mike over there, And so Micah certainly is not a completely polished edge rusher. He wins with his speed and his athleticism, but he can certainly get better in that area. I think, though, even Micah, he won't admit it, but I think he would prefer to be a linebacker who rushes from time to time as opposed to just being an edge rusher. And the other thing to your point is, yeah, the edge rusher is, I think, more important, especially if you're good at it. But when Micah's playing linebacker, he's playing 50, 55 snaps a game. When he's playing edge rusher, he's playing 37 to 39 snaps a game.
John, early draft pick returns for this team, I would say Osa Odigizua and Quentin Bohanna, outside of Micah Parsons, probably the best so far.
Really, and then even just looking at that game, like you look at Devontae Smith was the Eagles' first pick, and obviously the Cowboys traded with them so that they could come up and take Smith, and they moved back to 12. And on draft night, it was all about like, man, this is going to come back and haunt the Cowboys because they're going to have to deal with Devontae Smith for the better part of the next decade. And you're like, yeah, no, it's really possible. But then you look at what they got in return. They move back to 12, and they take Micah Parsons. And then with the third-round pick, they get Osa Odigizua. And you're kind of looking at like, man, that's a pretty good haul for, falling back to 12 to pick. It just, to kind of piggyback on being a person that covers the Cowboys and not seeing a lot of takeaways, like when do you really see like these young defensive players coming in and making an immediate impact the way that they've had on that side of the ball? And so that's pretty refreshing too. And again, that has to go to Dan Quinn as well as putting these guys in a position where they can have success. And I think he's done that with Osa. And I think Osa can even get a lot better. I think one of the best things he does when you watch the All-22 is that he just has a high motor. I mean, he's always going and he prides himself on that. So very advantageous that he has played the way he has, because we've talked about it many times on this show that defensive tackle is one of the thinnest positions on this team. And if you ranked them coming into the season, they probably would be 32nd out of 32 teams at that position.
So, John, the Panthers have gotten off to a nice start, but not without getting dinged up a little bit. We obviously know Matt Rule very well and are excited for him and their 3-0 start. But, J.C. Horn's out. Christian McCaffrey is now hurt. Looks like Chuba Hubbard, who Matt Rule knows very well, will be the main guy at running back for the Panthers. Just what are your instant takes and your kind of carryover takes as far as this matchup goes, and what maybe is problematic for Dallas or could present problems, and where you think they can feast a bit?
I'll tell you what, this doesn't happen much in the NFL. This is more of a college football thing. But being in that stadium Monday night, with just everything that was going on, from Dak coming back, the stadium being fully filled for the first time in over a year, 90,000 plus in there, the fact that they played well, Monday Night Football, you're playing against a division rival, you're dominating them, and then the halftime with Jimmy Johnson, and just everything was like the perfect storm. You almost are like, oh, noon game against the Panthers? Oh, this looks like a trap game. Like, are they gonna kind of maybe overlook this? And then, as you mentioned, you take out J.C. Horn and Christian McCaffrey. Like, are they gonna sleep on this 3-0 team? Even though they got a young coach and all that stuff. I don't think they will, just because this isn't some team that's really proven a lot in the Cowboys. I think that it's a lot of young guys that are, they feel like their best ball is ahead of them. So I don't think that they'll come out lackadaisical, but there is a part of that in the back of my mind. Maybe it's because of watching college football and you see a team get up for having to play like an Alabama or an Ohio State, and then the next week they're just completely flat. but it's just something to kind of keep an eye on, because I could see coming off of what they had to potentially overlook this game, and that would be a huge mistake, because this Panthers team, while they are missing those pieces, they're a good defensive team. Matt Rule is obviously a good coach, as you guys are well aware of. Sam Darnold's playing much better than he did with the Jets, and even when he was with the Jets, one of the best games he ever had with the Jets was against the Cowboys. So this is not a team that you should sleep on, but there's a part of me that thinks it's going to be interesting to watch them in the first quarter.
Amari Cooper and his rib looked okay the other night. I mean, the stats were a little scattered because they didn't need anybody to have a huge night. But the Cowboys concerned at all about him going forward?
They aren't as of right now, because what he has, he can play through. I just wonder how much it impacts him being the typical Amari, because Monday night he's playing with basically the same rib protector that you see college quarterbacks wearing, and so that's going to affect your mobility. He's not going to be able to do the same things there. But frankly, he really doesn't have to, because of all the weapons they have on offense. It's kind of crazy to think what they've done these last 2 games, and they haven't had Michael Gallup. And you just think of Blake Jarwin hasn't had a major impact, and he certainly can do that on offense. Because frankly, you've had CeeDee Lamb play the way he has. You've had Dalton Schultz step up. You've had Tony Pollard and Zeke play well. So there's just a lot of different weapons here. Cedric Wilson obviously stepped up this past Monday night. And so because of that, there's just so many different options that Dak has to go to. There's so many different options of plays that Kellen Moore can call, that I don't know that you need the Amari to be the Amari that he's been in years past, and you almost can let him heal. But the thing is, you do have to have the threat of him out there. And so I think that's what the plan is that we're gonna hope that his ribs continue to heal while he has the extra protection on, and maybe at some point in maybe the next few weeks, he can go back to not having to wear that and get a little bit back to how he was before the rib injury.
All right, so Super Bowl tickets are being printed right now. This is what they do, Paul. They
get us all excited.
You, they lure you into the web, and then they blow a tire.
You got to admit, though, this feels different.
No, it does, because the defense was always going to eventually just be like a wet paper sack. And I love, and everyone, they are playing and they're playing with energy. That doesn't mean they're not going to get boat raced by somebody or have a bad loss or someone runs for 200 yards against them, but they're playing, John. They look like they're playing with a rhyme and a reason. Yeah, I don't know if that's simple or what.
No, I think that's a good point. And I think it's because you have a mixture of things going on with this team. You have a young offensive coordinator who obviously wants to prove himself. You have a coach on the defensive side who got fired in Atlanta, who clearly believes that he should be a head coach in the NFL. He's hungry. He has these guys bought in. And then you have some free agents like the Keanu Neals and the Jaron Curses and DeMonte Kazis and Malik Hookers that probably feel like they're pretty overlooked, that they're signing these one-year deals for very little money. And then you have the young rookies that mix in. There just isn't a lot of guys that are walking out there that are like, yeah, we've done this before. Yeah, we can just show up. We're fine. You have a quarterback that's obviously coming off of getting the largest contract in franchise history, and he's coming off of a major injury. There's just a lot of hunger there. And then you mix it all up, and you have the fact that they were just so disappointing last year, and that's left such a bad taste in their mouth. There's just a lot for them to prove. But, to your point about the Super Bowl tickets, that is what is done around here. And it's not only on the local level, but nationally it happens with the Cowboys. And so anybody listening to this, please don't think that, I'm sitting here trying to say that, oh, yeah, this get ready, they're going to be making a run. There's 25, 26 years that have proven otherwise. But to your point, it does feel a little different right now. It feels like, hey, they're overcoming injuries. They're doing different things. It's not the same game plan from week to week. And this looks like what good teams in the NFL do to win. They're doing something different from week to week. And you're not able to just game plan with, oh, this is what the Cowboys are going to do, so we know this will happen. If they don't play well, then they lose. No, they have different types of things they're doing. They have different answers to the test. There's just a lot of reasons to be excited, especially because it's not even like they're at 100% right now, and they have a lot of guys that will come back later in the season, like DeMarcus Lawrence, who can make a huge impact. So I can totally understand why people are excited, and I can totally understand why people are like, hey, pump pump the brakes right now.
Look, right now the biggest complaint is that Mike McCarthy doesn't know how to work that thing with the numbers on it that tells you how long you have to do things. Oh, the clock. Yeah, he hasn't figured that one out yet, but maybe if he does.
Yeah, John, what did you think of Peyton Manning's reaction to that? On the did you get to see the Manning cast clip of him yelling at Mike McCarthy to call a timeout?
Yeah. So what I do on any of the nationally televised games, my younger brother usually watches them, and what he does is he'll send me videos of any of the best stuff because I'm not being able to watch in the press box, so that I can tweet it out if there's any. So he was sending me some of the best stuff, and obviously my hat's off to him. He hooked me up with a lot of my Twitter content for that game for sure, and he sent me that, and I couldn't tweet that thing fast enough because a tweet or a writing of Peyton's words take it to a certain level, but you really need the video to just really see the disgust on Peyton's face, him dropping his head. He was so disappointed. And it's one of those things where you can make an excuse and say, hey, they had 20-7 lead, man. Take that in the locker room. Everything's going good. But then there's the other part where you're like, yeah, and this is one of the greatest NFL players ever. And he's just as frustrated as I am sitting, on my couch watching this game. That takes things to another level. And so it was interesting yesterday in the press conference how Mike McCarthy pointed out how he's like, there's just so much praise coming right now for this team. And there's just, he said something along the lines of, we got toothaches right now because of all the praise or whatever. And then he throws in at the end, well, except for me, of course. And it was one of those things where it was a joke, but it was kind of like, I guarantee he feels that way. It's like, man, everything's heading in the right direction. Everything's going well. But still, people are criticizing me for something, and it's this clock management. And to be honest with you, there is a part of me that watches and they're like, they got by these last two games with wins, so you can kind of like push it to the side. But there is a party in the back of your mind that you're like, is a clock management mistake going to cost them a game in the near future? Could it cost them a game in the playoffs? And that's when that's when you think it's bad right now. Here, let one of those mistakes or one of those clock issues cost you when it's a big game and it really matters. I don't think the fans are going and media alike are going to be too kind if that's the result.
John, great stuff. Thank you. Jon Machota, theathletic.com, with us on Wednesdays, usually in the 5 o'clock hour, depending on things that he has as well.
They're good, man. They're good.
Yeah.
And they are
really
not nearly 100%, and I just don't know who's stopping that offense. I mean, consistently enough to be able to beat the Cowboys.
That's what was impressive about the Chargers is that hell of a game, and, of course, a 56-yarder wins it with Zerline and all of that was the fact that game had a bunch of 10-plus yard plays, lots of long plays, and then it was 14-14 till late in the game. So the Chargers, did they not just go to Kansas City and win?
Yep, they did.
Yeah. So it's fun. I love it. I do. The only thing about the NFL that continues to push me away at times is the incessant flags. It is just killing me as far as a fan that wants to watch a game. All right, when we come back.
You cover the Big 12 for a living. Imagine that.
Yeah. I mean,
imagine being so anti-flag, but covering the Big 12.
Here I was earlier today saying that I was complaining about not having a replay or two on a couple of plays, and oh my God, what am I saying?
Look, part of the thing is one of the NFL's officials for a long time, I haven't seen him do a game this year, but Walt Anderson was running the Big 12 officials for a good long while and kind of brought that philosophy of, just the minutia of things to the Big 12, and that's why you saw we're going to review the spot of the ball on a first and 10 play, 11 minutes left in the first quarter, and he got a yard.
Yeah. No, I know. No, it was. And you're right. They did it. And it didn't make any sense when we come back.